Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished guests. Thank you for joining us at the ninth annual Oakville Film Festival, OFA 2022. My name is Tyler Collins. I'm one of the festival hosts this year. I'm also the arts reporter for Oakville News. You can read us online for free every day at oakvillenews.org. We're so glad you were able to be here this afternoon. You have just experienced the wonderful screening of not just two terrific short films, but the feature Piece by Chocolate. And we now have two of the directors, one of the short and of the feature here joining us in a pre-recorded Q&A with you. Normally, for some of these events, we like to host them live so you can ask questions. But because of the availability of our talent in time zones, we had to pre-record this one. So we hope you enjoyed this special featurette, whether you just saw the film in the beautiful live film.ca cinemas, or if you are watching this at home with your families. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our talent. First, he is the director, star, and screenwriter from The Secret Life of Jim. We have Emmet Kelly.
Oh yeah, how's it going?
And the writer, director, and co-producer of Piece by Chocolate, joining us from Los Angeles, California, Jonathan Keijser.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Hi, thank you to both of you so much, not just for the work you've done, but for joining us here to do this special event for our festival goers. So I'd like to get started with you, Jonathan, telling us about the story behind Piece by Chocolate. This is a true Canadian history story. Tell us, what was your experience first hearing about the story, and what inspired you to turn it into a film?
So back in 2015, I think we can all remember when Trudeau was trying to get elected. He made a campaign promise, a very ambitious one, to bring 25,000 Syrian refugees to Canada by the end of the month. And that quickly expanded to over 50,000, and now I believe over 100,000 in Canada. And I think a lot of Canadians were watching very carefully to see, when he got elected, how this would play out. This is a matter of months. Bureaucracy moves slow. So the idea of bringing so many people from a war-torn country and doing it successfully and just being elected was a very fascinating moment to watch. And, so many Canadians stepped up and opened their homes and raised money to bring families to Canada. And this is just one of those stories. It's one of the thousands and thousands of stories. A very successful story of hope that brings people together. But it was a news feature in CBC Nova Scotia. They just covered the very first family who came to Nova Scotia for an entire year, every single month, and the elements of community and peace and chocolate and just all came together, and it made sense to make it into a film, because what better to export as Canadians than this story?
So how did you go about translating this to the screen? How did you choose? What were the integral moments on the timeline? Because it's one thing to make a documentary and just recount. A film like this is very different.
That is the challenge of all creators, right? Is how do we represent truth, and how do we have emotional integrity? So that's the thing we talked about with the family. They were very much involved in the process from the very beginning. I spent countless hours for an entire year researching, getting to know them, even making a short documentary between Frank and Isom, who you just saw, and real life. And they went for their very first camping trip in the Nova Scotian wilderness. So I said, can I come with you and film it, right? Really making sure we got close to the emotional truth of the story, and then kind of figuring out what would resonate most widely with people. I hope everybody saw that this is a real universal story. It's a story of family. It's a story of want versus need, and, father and son and mother and daughter, and, reinventing yourself when things don't go as planned. And so that was key, to make sure that was going to be the narrative focus of the film, was something that everybody could relate to.
We're going to come back to the idea of fathers and sons, but first I'd love to know, what were the impressions of the real family when they got to see the final product for the first time?
I would put it like this. Imagine if somebody came to you and said, I'm going to make a film about you and your family, and I'm going to dramatize it and cast actors. It would be a very awkward thing. So I think, when they first saw it, everyone was very pleased with the story, and they're even in the film. So in the opening factory scene that you've just watched, when the ribbon is cut, all the real families actually in the audience behind their actor
But
counterparts.
they're
So
making a cameo inside the
they're
final
making
scene of the film.
cameos. Yes, exactly. There's a bunch of those. And we really wanted them to be involved. The actors who you also just saw, the Arab actors, are stars in the Middle East, right? So imagine having, your Brad Pitt and your Meryl Streep, that you grew up watching become your mom and dad in a movie. So they were like super excited to make sure that they could meet them on set. But I think, they've really embraced the film. And again, this is their story. This is the core of their story. And they've been at so many screenings around the world and getting to share their own personal experience as well as the film.
One of the standout performances to me was Hatem Ali as Isam. He's so well balancing, especially when he's got so few words in English to convey that to an English audience is a big challenge, and yet his vulnerability and his discipline as a performer really stand out on screen, and that hit me from when I first watched it until the end, in which there was a title card seeing the film was dedicated to him because he passed away in 2020. Did he get to see any part of the finished product before he passed away?
He did, actually. So one thing about Hatem is not only is he an amazing, or was an amazing actor, but he's an amazing director. And his career really was made in the Middle East, as a lot of his colleagues describe him as the Spielberg of the Middle East as a director. So to be able to have that kind of talent, not only on in front of the camera, but behind the camera, and have a resource where I was able to work with somebody who was so accomplished in Middle Eastern drama, was just an immense joy for me to have that opportunity. And so I did actually have him watch the film before he passed, luckily, and give him his directorial notes to see, as a non-Arab, director, what he thought could be better. And we made sure we worked together on that. But he was just an absolute joy to work with on set.
Was there a specific director's note he gave you that sticks with you as you went through editing the movie?
Nothing in particular, but it's amazing how language, we put certain emphasis on certain words, right? And that doesn't always cross over in other languages. Like the way a Western audience might think, a phrase should go in a certain direction or have a certain weight, is this just does not translate. So that was kind of something that was very interesting to learn in the process of culturally where to put weight on certain words. And the intensity of performance also culturally really is balanced between Arab cinema and Canadian cinema. Is very, very different. So
let's talk now about the relationship between fathers and sons, because that's kind of the central relationship explored in Peace by Chocolate, both Tarek honoring his father and yet wanting to build his own life. But that's also the central relationship in The Secret Life of Jim. So let's go to you, Emmet, now. Can you talk to us how you crafted the narrative between Nick and his father?
My own father had passed away about 2 years previous to making the film, but I'd actually written the script already. And the thing that really, when someone's sick, especially if someone's looking after, if you're the sole carer or part of the family that are caring, you spend so much time looking after the parent or people visiting the family that you have very actual little time with the person to make your peace with them or to say something that you wanted to say, or make it kind of new memories. When someone is sick, you tend to be kind of reminiscing there's just a change in the dynamic, and that's something that interested me. And then when I writing the script is about Alzheimer's, and the dad is just kind of beyond that point of being able to be being cared for at home. It was just something that really interested me, that sort of dynamic, like the idea that someone would be nearly grieving their loved one before they're even gone, which with many people with Alzheimer's dementia tend to have to do. But also that idea of having someone who's kind of done all the legwork, looking after their parents, but emotionally maybe didn't have the time that they wanted to, and now that they feel that that time is after running out. So that was kind of the center piece of the film, really.
You know, I saw my own dad go through this experience, both with his parents and great or his grandparents, and I watched as a young boy his experience reckoning with this as they went through Alzheimer's disease, and so I understand and empathize greatly with that experience you say of feeling like you're out of the time, even though you've technically got it. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
talk to me about where the drama and the conflict comes into time as you're reckoning with the disease.
Well, I mean, when you're out of time, many cases, if someone is being forced to be taken away, or you can have people from the outside coming in and saying, he should have 24/7 care or something like that. There's so much stress on the carer, like not only just emotionally, but then obviously financially looking after someone, all these different things. And when it comes to Alzheimer's, just that idea of just like losing that moment where you might want to say sorry for something, or you want your loved one to say sorry or to make peace for something. Just like losing that time is devastating. But also then you're sort of stuck in their time, their new reality, or whatever reality that they're sort of in. So it's like a very, for a person living through it, it's a very, very strange experience. Like there definitely comes a time where you stop existing on your time and you exist now in that other person's space. You, like, if they called you a different name, there's no point in correcting someone at a certain stage. You might as well go along with their sort of given circumstances, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jonathan, now I love, Emmet, that you brought up the idea of time, right? Because that's such a great high stakes you can build into movie making, right? That's such a classic way to emphasize the drama that's going on. For Peace by Chocolate, the timeliness is different because Isam talks regularly about patience and the idea of events happening in their own time to Tarek. How did you go about talking to the family, but especially the real Tarek and Isam, about this conflict they had with each other? How vulnerable were they trying to discuss this with you in writing the movie?
I think what the most interesting thing about that was, the difference in Western and Eastern culture and this idea of time, right? I think especially in Western culture, we're always kind of rushing, or we're, haven't got enough done, or always kind of trying to have this pressure to succeed, or, be this person you want to be, right? Especially in the world we are as a young person, it's like you have to be something and get something done. And I think something that was really clear about the different perspective, the Eastern perspective, right, is that things do unfold at their own pace, and not to rush anything. And that was really important to highlight in the movie, because the relationship between the two it's a classic want versus need, right? In the film, I can't speak for Tarek himself because I'll let him do that, but at least for the character of Tarek, he needs to realize by the end that his role in life is something that is not necessarily medicine, right? It's not necessarily going to be giving back in that way. And that there are other ways, and probably more impactful ways. And I've actually heard the real Tarek speak about this, that, he would have loved to become a doctor, but, still being in a residency right now, or, helping somebody at a clinic, he's helping so many more people by sharing his family story, right? So it's like embracing a different version of what you think you've always wanted. And I think that's something we can all take away from.
Okay, let's move on now to talking about some of the challenges of filming the movie, because you filmed this not just in Nova Scotia, but you filmed this in the wintertime. I myself come from a small town in northern New Brunswick, and I know firsthand how brutal those winters are. What were some of the challenges you encountered trying to film the movie in the East Coast winter?
Just trying to get the crew to go outside. I mean, they don't want to. So, we spent a few of our shooting days were 100% outdoors, so we had a little hut built with a heater and, hot chocolate and warm soup. But, I mean, look, the crew was all a Montreal-based crew. They knew what they're doing. They knew. I mean, I hear most crews in Montreal in January, they go off for vacation, in Florida, somewhere warm. I brought them to work. I said, we're going to work in January when the weather is great for this film. But, one of the really exciting parts of this is about half of the shooting took place in a 17-room Victorian mansion. And we decided to do that so we didn't have to move very much in the winter, and that, we could always stay together. And so we just built our sets almost like a soundstage in different rooms of the house. But it also allowed us to be together. We had 3 languages on set. We had a completely Francophone crew. I had a little English component myself. And then we had Arabic speaking cast, and not one of us spoke the same language. So trying to make a film where you're just hearing 3 languages all the time and you're kind of stuck in this house, it's a little bit like controlled chaos, but at the same time.
How did you rein in the controlled chaos? How did you find the common language between the 3?
You just put chocolate out for people, and then no, actually I had to tell people not to eat the chocolate because, we would have run out about, day 1, we'd have nothing left to film. No, I mean, obviously there are miscommunications that happen when no one speaks the same language, and it doesn't matter if you have translators or Google Translate. It's just things that fall through the cracks. Shooting a movie is chaos to begin with, right? Even in one language. But I think it's a testament to the story that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you're from or what your background is. We're all the same, underneath the skin. We're all human beings. And if you know why you're there on set and you know the story you're telling, all the cast, the Arab cast, they're all refugees themselves. They're all the first North American production. They'd all lived through a very similar experience as the Harads. So it wasn't like they were acting necessarily. They were reliving their own experience and bringing that story not only to the film, but to our whole cast and crew, and sharing that with us.
Well said. We're almost out of time, but before we go, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the chocolate slightly. Is there any special piece that you learned about the chocolate making process throughout talking with the family and learning about the industry?
It was something that was really important that we got right. I hope if a chocolatier watches this, they're not too offended. It's a lot of things when you're making a film, especially based on a true story. Not only do you want the culture to be right, but you want the chocolate to be right. And so the actual tempering wheel used in the film is the same tempering wheel. That's the wheel that heats up the chocolate in order to put it into molds. It's the same one that they have in the factory. We have the same molds. Our production designer even learned how to make chocolate. Right before, he spent 2 weeks learning how to make chocolate before we shot. So he would able to understand the process and make more if we needed it. And it was very good, actually. So
he was making chocolate on the movie set?
Yeah, he was making chocolate. We would run out. So the real, family, Piece by Chocolate, they sent us boxes of chocolate to use. But after a few days of shooting, you can't reuse the same chocolate, and crew kept eating it, so we had to repopulate the chocolate. So he would just make it with the same molds, and it was just it was just a fun time. It was a fun movie to shoot. So
well, I'd like to thank both of you so much, not just for being here today, but also for offering your movies to us for us to share with our Oakville audiences. Please join us in a round of applause for those of you in the theater and at home, thanking Jonathan Keijser and Emmet Kelly for joining us today. Thank you, both of you. Thank you for joining us for this very special insight into Piece by Chocolate and the Secret Life of Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
For all of you still watching, we have lots more great events that are coming up for OFA this year. We have a full slate of movies available both virtually and for you to see back here at film.ca cinemas tomorrow on Sunday, plus our 2 short compilations that are also set for Monday and Tuesday to end the festival. Whatever you choose to see, we hope you enjoy the remainder of OFA. Have a wonderful afternoon.